Hello, 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 and welcome to the Mystic Nerd Squad podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Meyerson. Just absolutely 100% delighted today. This is a conversation that I've been waiting a while to have. And I just want to tell you right off the bat, if you're able, pause and get yourself a glass of water. And I'm going to explain to you why very soon. My guest today is Kimberly Rose Ouelette. Did I say that the right way?
Yes.
Good.
Well,
She is a turned cosmic entrepreneur, visionary of sun-kissed lunatics. With a medical background, she bridges science and spiritual mysticism. Her passion for hidden knowledge inspired mirrors of creation and exploration of water's consciousness, healing power, and sacred structure in relationship to understand her grandma's faith. Welcome and thank you for being here, Kimmy. I'm so happy to have this conversation with you.
thank you. Uh, First of all, just thank you for this platform and being like allowing a voice to be summoned and come forth, so we can talk about these things. And um, just thank you for that, Kelly.
You're you are so welcome. And there is nothing that doesn't get me excited about your bio and the work that you do. First of all, the science plus the spirituality plus consciousness, those three pieces together are what I'm all about, why this podcast exists. So when we have that perfect alignment, I get really excited. And we alluded in your bio to your book, which came out not too long ago. And we'll make sure that this is in the show notes because this book is just beautiful. You're going to get to know Kimmy as we have this conversation today. She is one of the most beautiful, giving, loving, lovely souls that I've met, and I've met many. And you can feel that and feel her throughout this book. And so I want us to talk about this, but I want to go back a little bit before we get into the juiciness of the book. How did water become something that was of interest to you?
That's a great question. Uh, so water, I grew up in Florida, so it's raining, it's water. It's like when you go to school, you're sopping wet, rain, water. Um, my last name, Ouelette, means source of spring water, which I later found out. And so, um, I think my dad was a waterman. He would deliver water. And then I had a dream of like, you know, when I was in college, I don't know if you ever heard of time techniques, but time
Wow.
techniques are like, it's this really awesome way of connecting to yourself. It's almost like we can t time travel. So it's with time techniques, you kind of close your eyes and you visualize your timeline. And so you can, some people's timelines move left to right, some are forward and back, but you connect to your timeline and then you can ask yourself, like, what do I see in 5 years? What do I see in 50 years? And you let your mind just kind of grow soft and just receive those things, those answers. So I did this maybe like, oh goodness, it has to be 10 years ago. But I was sitting there and a teacher had the class do this. And so I remember writing down, oh, I don't know why, but some reason I'm gonna be working with water and bringing it to life and bringing clean water to people. And so, and I wrote that down and I have it written and it's years later. And I went a whole different journey because I went toward the respiratory in the medical field. And so I was working with, lungs, breath, and learning all that metaphor. Um, uh, but it's so fascinating to learn how you'll see yourself through time in many different aspects. But to bring it back, water it just became this fixed symbol all around me that I could see it in plants. So like I go outside with a little tin flute, and once I learned that that plants could like they were receptive to when we talked to them because of our CO2 reacting with them. Um I would play my little flute and be like this to the plants. But I as I delved even more, I learned more about the water inside the plant and how that might have been the more even minute thing that was receiving communication. I know a girl, she does this thing where she'll take flowers and she'll take dead flowers. They look rough, and she'll start speaking to them, and she places them in the water and speaks to them, keep speaking, and they'll come back just beautiful. Yeah, it's an amazing thing I've seen. I'll have to connect you to see that. But yeah.
Yes, please do. I love this so much. And I've heard that as well, talking to your plants. I never knew it was the CO2. So thank you for that because that piece of science is really, really cool. And the way that the water is working through the plant. But automatically, what comes up in my mind is
Mhm.
facts that I've heard about how much of our human bodies contain water and how essential water is for all of the functions in our bodies. And it makes me think if we play music and speak kindly to plants and it activates the water in them, which brings them into a more vibrant state. What does that mean for humans?
Right. I think it means we have a lot more direct connection than we may be preconceiving. Yeah. The drink.
I'm taking my sip of water because it's getting me really
Yeah.
excited to talk about this. And you know what? I it's funny to me because we spoke, oh my gosh, back in the fall of 2024. It was a while ago when we kind of planned this based on your book launching, and you had a really fantastic trip, which we'll talk about. But in the time span since you and I spoke, the universe has been giving me pieces of information about water. All of a sudden, one of my favorite podcasts, the host started talking about the coherence of water and drinking coherent water. I listened to another podcast and it was talking about a fourth state of water, which is like a more viscous kind of state, right? And
Yeah.
I was like, never in my life have I heard this much about water. And it all really started with our conversation. And so I think this is such a timely conversation. So, what would you like to respond to for what I just said?
Oh, I'm geeking out inside. So I the fourth state of water, that was something on the when I traveled to Japan. That was something that we learned kind of directly. And that fourth state is so cool because it's like it's a purging state. So they'll put like, maybe some thick orange juice in it and freeze it. And so it's that moment, the fourth state is when like the ice is starting to thaw out and the orange juice is kind of separating from the water. So like within ourselves too, it's such this great metaphor of like the fourth state is kind of when all the things that maybe like we're combining to our ego or ourself or like like toxic rooties, but we're that fourth state is that little purge of separation where we can see in between and what that looks like.
Ooh,
And
okay. Tell me more about this. How do we work with that? That's what I want to know. So somebody's listening and they're like, this sounds fascinating. How do I work with my body and work with the water? Because aren't we all, those of us on that healing journey, wanting to be able to separate, analyze, and transmute those
Hmm.
experiences and feelings and experiences in our body.
So that's it's really beautiful. Um, So let me find how I would do it. So first, what I do, so I'll tell you what I do with patients,
Yeah.
because like how do you bring all this into the real world? So I felt like an undercover agent when I was working at the hospital, and I bet like many people do. Here you are, you got like, I know this little bit of magic. How do I bring it into this place of healing to activate even more of healing? And so I would go to my and it's really simple. And sometimes that's what life like when it really shines through. But with patients, I would come across a patient and she would be really down, just like, feels like alone. I mean, we can talk about kind of inside hospital dynamics, but yeah, a lot of loneliness, feeling neglect, feeling like a burden, feeling this lost sense of self. And um, I came into the room and I witnessed this lady, and you could tell she's like, this is not her true kind of nature there, but she's experiencing it to cope. Um, and so I went and she had a water glass next to her and it was blank. And so um, the study or the kind of the example was with Masaru Emoto. He was the one who founded the messages of water. Um, but he said that if you write on water, um, the water's like it's semi consciousness kind of picks up on those words and the intention, and the structure of the water starts to adapt to it. So just by writing on a glass and maybe even giving that power into it and letting it be received into that consciousness of it's the water itself, kind of melds it together, right? So if we were looking at fourth phase, we're kind of the first part is like when things are binding together, right? And so here's this woman, she's feeling like totally wreck. So I was like, I sat with her. I said, come on, you know, let's try something new. I was like, and I told her the story about um uh uh Masaru Emoto's water study. And so if you write the positive words, the molecular structure will show um like very symmetrical shapes. And then you write negative, like hate, and you speak hate, it gets all distorted. Um, and then when you are just neutral and don't say nothing at all, there's still distortion. So it's
Mm,
like being ignored and not being tended to has just as much as effect as not as negative words being sown into yourself. So that part is very powerful. Um, and then so anyway, I sit with this woman and I say, let's write some words on water. It's like, okay, I know you don't feel good right now, but how do you want to feel? Or like, and so we start talking. She's like, I want to feel strong. I want to feel like confident. I want to be able to walk. I want to be. So we just started laying words all over this water, right? And just being in the presence of somebody that just wants to see you, and we can talk about mirror symbolism after, but um so we write all these words on the water bottle for this lady, and then at the end we have her drink it, right? And so she comes and she sips this water, and she feels love, she feels cared, she kind of with her hand wrote out her script. Now, doctors give you prescriptions and things, and this was kind of her moment to decide, here's what I want to prescribe for myself.
mm,
And so we go and she drinks it, and she just kind of, you see her body change. And it's just more even like that deeper seated belief and the activation of her own cells, her own body, her own desires coming forth. And so the fourth phase is like that moment too, where she drinks and she does, and she kind of pushes away that things that she doesn't want, the impurities that don't belong to her. And you can look at it as like an energetic thing of just like coming out of her skin, coming out. But
Hmm.
um, that way, I think we can apply it every day. When you grab a glass of water, when you brush your teeth, you flush the toilet, you take a shower, you have that authority to speak to that element and be, give it gratitude, but also, you know, prescribe yourself the medicine too that you want. If you want love, just sing to it and mm, take a sip and let it fill you. Um, and I love that about water. That's right there.
I think
Hmm.
that is such a beautiful story and illustration of one, how simple it can be, that these are practices that someone can put in place today. They don't need to buy anything, they don't need to get help from anyone. They can be their own guru and introduce this. And I think what's so beautiful about the story that you shared is that your contagiousness of positivity impacted that woman enough that she became self empowered, that it wasn't something that you did for her or to her. It was something you did with her in her presence to just show her the path and then allowed her to take it on her own. So I love that. I love anything that we can offer others that becomes empowering and doesn't create any kind of a reliance that this is something we're all capable of doing. I'm certainly going to start doing that now because I feel like these are beautiful opportunities, not only for blessing and bringing about more of a consciousness that you desire for yourself, but that it's giving us those moments of pause during the day, bringing us into a higher state of presence in our lives. And I think once we're aware, we're present, we can become so much more intentional with how we're using our bodies and our energy.
That's well put and very insightful too, because you're kind of illuminating how it kind of reminds us that we do have choice. Like in everything, we have choice in everything, and sometimes we're taught service and servitude, but it turns into slavery, and we lose our choice in things. So that reflective moment of coming back into the center self and um is so like deeply profound and so important into our existence of here we are right now. And it comes simply just by learn. And sometimes, speaking can be like, ah.
Sure.
But, using your words, um, the way we are created is so intuitive. And I sometimes think like we know all of the answers. It's just because our DNA is it's this instruction, it's this helix, it's woven together, right? So we have the instruction book right inside of it. We're functioning. It's just learning how to read it and find the language again. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What
How
is
do,
more? I'm curious though about the water coherence and what you learned. Yeah.
well, the one podcast in particular, the host has been using it's I haven't looked into it in any great way.
Hmm.
But it's a device that turns any water into coherent water. So
Hmm.
it's called the NLMA. I don't know. I don't ask me how it's spelled, but it's going to be like partially acronym. And then the the other podcast that I listened to, a woman whose specialty is water, she talked about getting your water from a more natural source, like if you have the means and you're in a place where you can go into nature and go to more of a natural spring to get water, which I think, on one hand, I think is beautiful, but depending on where you live, if you live in a city, it's not necessarily practical. You can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think water is such a multi-layered issue.
Mm-hmm.
Access to clean drinking water, depending on where people live in the world, it can be really challenging to get clean
Mm-hmm.
drinking water. And I think you and I feel very similarly about that, that all people, in particular, for me, it's children, deserve to have fresh water and all the water that they need to drink. And in some places in the world, that's not happening right now.
No, no, it's what's kind of popping up in my mind too is like this interesting dynamic about like um so will it's kind of the chemicals inside of the water. So like we'll get pharmaceuticals that are placed in our water and it's kind of at our benefit, but at the same time it's this kind of layer of consent too if you're getting like different like mood inhibitors or endocrine inhibitors inside your water. And again, it's like imagine this very permeable surface and it's carrying an intention or inside of it that's not to your consent. It's radical kind of what we're kind of existing in, and to
Mm.
take conscious of that. And um um I'm kind of, so I use the, no sponsors here, no, but the if you want to come
Come
but
find me.
the I started with the Alexa Puras, or have you seen those? Yeah, I use that for our water at home. So we kind of, and it's kind of what I love about it is it's kind of intimate because you have to take water from somewhere and run it through a cleaning process. Um, and then our container has like a moon and all symbols all over it. So we kind of are allowing it to have that. Um, Another thing too to be conscious of is like sometimes we think that we have to over filter water to make it clean and like strip it of all its essence. But the minerals are really important. And like without some minerals, like your body's functioning is going to start to impede. Like if you cut out all the sodium, all the electrolytes.
Mhm.
So that's to be mindful when you're investigating like a water filtration system for your
Yes.
home or water
We,
bottle.
you know what? We did that. We,
Mm-hmm.
at a point in time, we were living in a house and like we were feeling frustrated by the needing to, we had, one of those pitchers with the filter in it and it was just exhausting. And so we had a company come and they did reverse osmosis.
Mm-hmm.
And so at first it was good, but my husband and I would say to each other, I feel like I'm drinking this water and I feel more thirsty. And after a while, we started experiencing headaches. And it was like, we were
Wow.
both like, I think it's the water. And so we contacted the company and they said, oh, yeah, because it strips out all the minerals that you need for your body. So we have this thing that we can like add back in. So we can give you like the minerals back into the water that are stripped from the water. And we were like, wait a second. So the water was good. We just wanted it to be clean, dechlorinated, and
Mm-hmm.
not, like you said, not have any of the pharmaceuticals, pesticides. Like we just wanted all of that clear in the water so it was safe to drink. We still wanted it to have the minerals and the hydration. So ultimately we said, all right, forget that. We're just gonna go back to like our basic filters so that we're getting the water as it's supposed to be consumed. And, as we read into it more, it's basically the same as like drinking distilled water. Distilled water does not have what your body needs in order to survive, that so many of those minerals and nutrients that are in the water carry in the water, and it's how your body can use it.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy. It's really, it's kind of, as you're telling the story, it's like, it kind of illuminates like how, how I put it in words, but just that, your intention is to do something good because you want the best for yourself, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I've heard clean water, I want to get this, but then there'll be missing puzzle pieces. It happens in multi layers of systems, but in this case, like, I want clean water, and then we don't know that the minerals, they have an effect too with inside it. Um, but I think that's why one of like the kind of the spirits of um writing Mirrors of Creation it was because what you're pointing out is how we need to kind of have the intention, but we really do need to have logic there too. We need spirit and logic combining together,
Mm.
um, to really create the full system. So if the spirit's craving for, clean water, but logic tells us too, we do need minerals, right? And then we'll get sold systems that are, well intentioned, or they want, but they're almost a little bit stealing from us because you have to pay to get the minerals that you also need too, which is kind of messed up.
That's where we landed on it. We were like, this is
Yeah, it's
silly.
messed
This is
up.
so silly. Like we were like, let's just it it just it seemed like an unnecessary expense that was like taxing on our bodies. Seemed very
No,
silly. Yeah. Okay.
it's
So
messy.
you started to go into this book,
Yeah.
and it's it's such a beautiful book, and both as you look at it, it's beautiful, but the way that it's written, the way that it flows, not
Mhm.
unlike water, is beautiful. Where did the inspiration and the inner guidance come from
That
to
come from.
create a book?
Um, so the book, the genesis of it's pretty interesting. So about September 28th of last year, my grandma passed away. And so we have like a French background, but and we call her Mimir. So when she was passing, I kind of felt like I closed my mind. I was on an event called Win the Day, and um at that event we were learning like how to win the day, and like the different things you can apply, and how you could choose victim mentality or you can choose the higher self. And so we're learning this stuff, and then I get the call that she's passing, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm sending my, spirit to her and just kind of connecting. But my grandma, I want you to imagine her. She is just like really big smile, super big smile. Um, and she loves to color. So she wakes up every day for hours, and those scriptured coloring sheets, that was what she'd do. So she'd color. And you don't realize the power of just that, what she really was doing. So she'd be sitting there with all this love, all this Grammy energy, and just sending it out to her family and her people, praying and just like intervening. And you don't always realize that's like, if people took anything too from this, is like your words have power, your prayer has power, you are a powerful being. And we have to combine action and the prayer too. So there's that divine feminine masculine balance that we have to integrate. But from grandma's perspective, just embracing that drawing and then sending out prayers. So when she was passing, I saw this vision in my head, and it was the cover of the book. It was like floating inside my head. I wrote down the title. Um, One of the speakers was Mark Victor Hansen, but he was the writer of one of the co-writers of Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Mhm.
And so he was saying, if when you write in purple ink, because that'll remind you that your words are from the spirit, because of
Hmm.
the third eye and the purple representing that kind of spiritual. So I had a purple pen and I'm writing Mirrors of Creation. I wrote the title down. And so we're driving home and I knew what to write. So partly when you're reading through it, I think you're reading Meme's message. And um I think you're reading that kind of, it's channeled from God coming through. You can give me credit, but that's just the vessel in this and letting it channel through. Um, and I think what the book kind of solves, the solvent is it gives like we grew up Christian with the Christian background. And so um when I started getting into the water, and I make me and my sister, we make aromatic sprays. So we've been doing this where we write on our sprays and put intention, and we get a collective to come together and like say prayers of healing and all that. And on the full moon we like imbue that cooling energy, full potential energy into our water sprays. But when we go out to markets, people, like, one of the answers we'd have to come to is some people come up and they'd be like, that's not from God, or that's not, they'd come a little persecution.
Mm.
And so me and my sister, oh, we're gentle spirits, loving, totally. But persecution would come a little toward the table. And so with the book, I felt like it was showing this answer, like, no, water comes from God and the science to combine together. And like it's so important to realize like that creation has a language. And I learned something here. I'm at Wizard Academy, and we went to a whiskey tasting. And so I hardly drink, but it was fascinating. At Wizard Academy they have whiskey sommeliers,
Oh.
but they teach people to like really understand the story of whiskey. So it's kind of interesting because it's spirits too, and so whole different thing. But the man teaching the tasting, he said that people, when they don't have words for things, their brain negates it. It
Mm.
just like, he told a story about like when Christopher Columbus was coming to the Americas. Um, some people never saw ships, right? So they'd see in the horizon these figures, but would just ignore it. Like, okay, there's something weird on the coastline or something there. Um, and the point is though, is like when we don't know something in its minuteness, which science provides, it breaks down everything into this kind of very detailed layer. We have language, and it's language of creation. Yeah.
Mm.
Hmm.
I love that. I think that's such a great point that you've made, because I think a lot of times on your spiritual journey, no matter where you started or where you're moving towards, people might not understand because they haven't been on the journey with you. And
Hmm.
so when you either experience persecution or people like, no, that's not right, or you shouldn't do that, or whatever it is, any kind of opposition to what you're doing, the understanding that it's not really even about you. It's just they don't have the language to talk about it. So their body is rejecting it. That's really interesting. I like that a lot.
That's so profound. Kelly, you have a way with words. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That's a writer downer.
Writer downer.
A writer downer. Write it
I'm
down.
writing down some of your beautiful statements that you've made to creation has a
Yeah.
language. I think it's important because a lot of times we can, in a moment of weakness, allow somebody else's objection to where we're headed, or the diving into some of these topics, whether it's science or spirituality or both,
Mhm.
it's uncharted territory sometimes for us. And I think sometimes those negative voices can be in our own minds as well. Like, no, 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 that doesn't make any sense. Why would we do that? Why would we go there? And trying to exist in that, like, because we're born as humans with a negativity bias. It's part of what keeps us safe at times, but we tend to have that negativity bias. And when we start operating and shifting out of what we've always done before, that pull back can be
Mhm.
strong. And it can be from us and it can be from other people. So I love that creation has a language
Yeah. What
that
I
we need to learn the words, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That was kind of something in the past 2 years of experiencing was not learning, not knowing language for systems that were happening in my mind. So I don't know if you've heard of Transform Destiny or any of that, with Michael Stevenson, but
Mm-hmm.
went to one of his courses, Create Your Life, and that's where I started learning like some neuro-linguistic programming. So
Mm-hmm.
that stuff is so cool. But neuro is the mind, linguistics is uh, language, and then programming is the taking that your mind operates, or maybe computers simulate the way our minds operate. But when we program something, we're kind of like repeating a pattern so that we know what to do. Because you're like, okay, lift my hand, lift my hand. I bet you experience, because don't you do some like rehabilitation and
Mm-hmm.
learning how to
Mm-hmm.
retrain the mind to come back alive? I just thought about that. That's pretty cool. Um, oh, but yeah, when I went to that course, it gave me language, so it explained what I was doing. So when I first started, I said I had, I went back in time and did the time technique. So at that event, I learned what I was doing inside my mind, that it's called time techniques. And now you can teach other people, oh, this is how you can time travel using a time technique, and it's using your imagination. And then accrediting that action, that it's real too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, that's pretty incredible.
It is pretty incredible. And the power of language, I think, is really exciting to me. As a word person, I love
Mhm.
reading, writing, poetry, music, lyrics, all of that stuff is like of high interest to me. And so learning more about the way that language can play, whether it's the messaging in your own mind or the things that you repetitively say. And what it's making me think about, this keeps popping in my head as we're talking about water,
Mhm.
techniques such as like EFT, emotional freedom technique, where you're tapping on parts of the body and you're saying things it makes me think like as you're doing the tapping on your body and you're saying the things, that water takes part in that. Water is a conduit, the electricity, the patterning, the moving through. Do you think so? Yeah,
Oh,
so maybe.
I feel I've never thought about like the EFT part of it, like but I saw it in a different way, like total where you're moving, you're touching that water in your body. The reason I got so excited was like, so when I went to Japan, one of the teachers he taught us, he was like, all right, everybody, I want you to stand up. And so he could all stand up, but I want you to stand up. And he talks about activate all the water in your body. He's like, activate it. He's like, think about your fingers, start moving your fingers, start moving, dancing around, and just get up and start moving and activating all that water in your body. And then start, we would say prayers for everybody, like, your body, but there was power in that activation of your cells and the fluid. I think we were talking how it's the fluid in your body and getting it present, getting it active. So with the tapping, yeah, it's like when you did that, I was imagining splashing, like you're splashing, splashing. It's so
And
cool.
yeah, I mean, it's a hypothesis. I don't know if it's true
Hmm.
or not, but it just makes me think like that the rhythm, the tapping, certainly there's the energetic flow, but
Hmm.
I don't think we can separate the energy from the water. Um, and it also makes me think about we're created and exist in water when we're in the womb. The womb is full of
Hmm.
water. We actually breathe the fluid in and out before we learn how to breathe air. And when we come into the world, that there's the break of the water, and the water comes out of our lungs and we start to breathe oxygen, and we scream
Hmm.
and we cry because it's such a change. It's such a huge change from being inside to being outside and coming into the world. Um, and I think that experience too. And then we get the nourishment from our mother. If you're, if a mother
Hmm.
is breastfeeding, then all of that energy of her body creating with water and all the nutrition in her body creating the perfect nutrition for her baby. And certainly this is not a commentary on like breast versus bottle. I'm not judging,
No,
but like
just
whether it's a mother consciously breastfeeding or consciously giving a bottle to her baby that has formula, that bringing water into the baby's life, the hydration is so important from so early on.
mhm.
It's such a miraculous design that our human bodies have. And you spoke earlier about the passing of your grandmother. When people transition at the end phase of life, their body releases all of the water.
Yeah.
So when they finally pass, the water has left their body. Isn't that just, it's just all coming together for me now, Kimmy. So thank you for taking that journey with me of like the full life cycle, the existing in water, the water in us, the water out of us. And it does kind of bring in some of the scripture play too, with the idea of like ashes to ashes, dust to dust,
Yeah.
and that is eventually, but then the disintegration of the body into the ground and back to the water and nourishing plants that
Yeah.
nourish the animals, nourish the people. Anyway, I could go on and on. I don't need to go on and on though, because you have covered a lot of the beauty of water here. I, with your permission, I would love to hear about your connection to Hiro Emoto.
Okay. Uh, So this is pretty cool. So um I had seen those. I read a book, I think it was called Earth Magic. like maybe 15 years ago or something. So in this book, Earth Magic, it talks about tears and like how tears are more than what we think. And that set me on a journey. So in that book is where I learned that we have basal reflex and well, the most important one,
Hang
emotional
on.
tears.
Yes,
Not so much
yes.
emotional, but how each of those have different proteins and minerals that kind of exude. So when you cut an onion, and you start crying, that tear, if you look at it underneath a microscope or just analyze the water and the content in it, is much different than the ones when we're crying. Um, and so I found that study and I was like, what? And I was a bit of like, a little tough girl. I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry.
Yeah, yeah.
And I realized that I that crying was so powerful because um what I later learned was that that protein is something that's in front of our prefrontal cortexes. So imagine proteins and amino acids are building blocks. They help build things. But here we had an emotion or an experience or something that came and it comes and it's this is a hypothesis, but I feel like memories are stored maybe as amino acids and proteins. Um, but that gets stored right here. And so when you cry, the book showed some studies where the people would cry and then they'd analyze, but the same proteins would be reflective they in the tear water that were where your brain was lighting up. And then they'd do another and the brain would be different. Um, so it's this just kind of incredible thing of like, I don't know if you geek out on Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter where they have
All
the
of it.
memories or water.
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
So it redefined how I looked at tears.
Yeah.
And so if I lost a patient or I had an experience, I would capture my tears in little water bottles, like little tiny kind of, because they just became so sacred,
Mm.
knowing that they really were connected to the building blocks in my body and my brain. And then I felt honored every time, like when they would release. And I would be like, oh, let me grab these ones. It changed everything. And it made crying feel like something almost, dare I say, like fun, but like interesting and like accepted. And I think we kind of come from at least a couple generations where it's like beat into people's heads, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry.
Mm.
Oh my gosh. And that you'll hear people, they'll be stuck in cycles, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost a blockage. It's just this
Mm-hmm.
blockage that your brain keeps going, I can't get over, I can't get over. But you
Exactly.
cry and you release the blockage. That
Yeah.
pressure gradient changes it, and then then your
Yes.
brain can move on and go keep growing.
Yeah.
So that led me to deeper research where I found out I was like, who's like, where is this water stuff? Can I learn more? And I came across Hiro Emoto. And those are the studies where he showed he had 3 glasses of water. He wrote and spoke life into one. He put negativity and then just ignored another sample. And then he froze those and he showed um, that each of the crystallines were different. So the more positive showed symmetry and just like kind of go like a lotus flower blooming out, and then um uh the negative was distorted, and then I think as we mentioned before with the ignored, it was just as distorted. So I kind of was like, is this real? Is this real? So at work, I would use the medical library to start looking at more research. So I'd be on my breaks at the hospital, I'd be in the library searching water consciousness, water this, water. And then Hiramoto's name kept popping up, popping up, popping up. And I clicked the links and I saw that there was the chance to go to Japan. And it was his son, Hiromoto, Masaru Emoto's son. He was the originator. So his son was holding classes to share his father's work. And so I was kind of like, what do I do? Do I don't have enough time off at work to do this. But this feels like a calling from like God.
Mm.
This feels so real that I need to. And so I waited for like um a couple weeks and I was like, I don't know. And then I would ask God, I was like, show me signs, show me, talk to me, kind of reconfirm. And then I got invited to go to a Japanese restaurant and I had never been ate Japanese food. And it was through the person who gave me language for the time techniques.
Mm-hmm.
So Michael Stevenson's class, we went,
Mm-hmm.
we got Japanese food, and I looked at John, and I said, "We're going to Japan," and so I just rearranged my whole life.
Wow.
I was working like full time aggressively as a respiratory therapist, and then I went up to my bosses. I said, "Come, guys, I need to sit down. I've discovered something. I need to go learn and find the truth out. Put me as PRN. I'm going part-time." And just restructured my entire life to go to Japan and go study here for a while and learn this. And when I got there, there was people from all over the world. It's called International Hado Instructor or International Hado School, but it's in Japan. And it's this exact location where, if you're a fan of Masaru Emoto, where he did all his work. And some of there's a picture of him on the wall that when you go through the course and you learn, and they have, it's pretty fascinating because it's in Japanese, but they have English translator.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll translate, it's like back and forth of you. So you're learning all this Japanese and, um, you know, and you have the advantage of English there too. Um, but we got to go and learn how to crystallize the water ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
which was so cool. And what was really cool too is like you kind of see like you can bring this home to you. So it's like a thing you could really do with your family and just like with your kids, and like what a special experience. So we all wrote love and gratitude on um samples. Uh and so it's a petri dish, and then you put some water on it. It's very simple. The water, and you close it, and then we had to wait a day to like let it really freeze and get to this state.
Mm-hmm.
There's a way that the water will look when that it turns into this little mountain like
Mm-hmm.
this little peak of mountain of the way it freezes. It's pretty interesting. Um, and the top is almost like a little bit like denser, whiter. Um, and so we go and I'm like, what's going on? And so Hiromoto, he's just like a amazing guy. He loves karaoke. So we went, he loves karaoke and he's got big presents. But the first experience with the water crystals, they take you into this like you have to put on a big freezer suit. So you're gonna go into a freezer
Oh,
and
wow.
but it's still kind of like homemade a little bit too. So it's like kind of like this combination of a freezer, but also doable because like, okay, just take some wood and kind of put the freezer. And then all our samples we stored inside a freezer fridge, a little one. And then you take your sample and you slide it underneath the microscope. And then you look and we have a camera set up and you just look, and then like within like a few seconds, that water, once it's out the freezer, it goes to that fourth phase, melts just a tiny bit, and then you see all these little magical crystals form. And it's so cool. So, and you're just like your eyes are bewildered.
Yeah.
And mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. That is so cool because it is literally the convergence of science and spirit and consciousness. So, oh my gosh, that is such a beautiful place to cap this episode. I want to just encourage everybody to get the book. We'll put a link to the book in the show notes because I really do think I was thinking to myself, um, it's a beautiful gift. Mother's Day and Father's Day are just around the corner. Um, Somebody you know, a friend, a graduate, just a beautiful way to give some consciousness to someone about an element that is in their bodies, in their life every single day, and really allow it to permeate every part of your life and to bring so much more positivity, healing, growth, consciousness, all of those beautiful things. I am going to take away some fantastic practices to put into place. I'm going to start talking to my water. I'm going to sing to my water. I'm going to write little love notes on my water bottle. And I I'm just really excited about this. And I hope you will come back again so that we can dive even deeper into the every day there's new science and technology about all of this. Maybe even talk about the functional piece of managing water, how, like, what kinds are the best. I would love to have another conversation about that because I think it's becoming something, at least in um, my people that spin around my world are really thinking about more consciously than I ever recall that being. When I was a kid, like we just turned on the faucet and drank the water and took it for granted, you know? so
Mm-hmm.
so this is wonderful. Is there any last piece of wisdom or advice you'd like to leave the listener with?
First, oh, I just want to just say how thank you for this opportunity, Kelly. In your presence, oh my gosh, I feel so comforted and like comfortable around you. Um, you are so water is a mirror, right? It's reflective of the spirit, the soul. You dive deeper into its compound, it can show you the world that we're living in. Um, there's one quick story, but there was a lady, there's a goddess named Oshun, and Oshun, she would hold a mirror. So she'd hold a mirror and she'd tell you to look into it. And she's the goddess of water. She's hold a mirror and she says, look inside this mirror and you'll see you. And so water is it's that thing that shows us who we are too.
Mm,
Thank
I
you.
I love that. And I think that adds just one more practice since we are so much water. Find a mirror today, listener. I want you to look in it, look into your own eyes and your own soul and tell yourself that I love you. Tell yourself I love you, receive it and feel it. Um, and then find me or find Kimmy and tell us what your experience is of that. Share your experiences with water and how this has changed for you. And when those tears come up for you, whether they're emotional, when you're chopping onions, and the tears come to protect you, or otherwise, think more consciously about what is happening for you with your tears and the water from your body. I want to thank my guest, Kimmy. I have loved speaking with you as well. I enjoy just your presence, and it makes me believe that one, you're probably an incredible practitioner when you're working with your patients, and I can only imagine the healing that's possible in your presence. And that this journey that you're on that has, inspired you to upturn life as it exists and follow your passion and follow your drive for talking about water. I'm so glad that you've done this. And I encourage everybody, make sure you go into those show notes, get yourself a copy, get a copy for a friend, a family member, somebody you know who this will mean so much. I can't tell you who I'm getting one for because I don't want to spoil the gift, but I do have someone in my life that I'm thinking of specifically for this. I'll tell Kimmy after we stop recording. Anyway, thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here all the way to the end of the podcast. Share this episode with someone else if you think it will inspire them and change their lives. And I want to remind you to stay curious because you never know where that curiosity is going to leave you. I'll see you next time, everyone. Bye for now.